So now let me address scams and dementia. Scams is a multi-billion-dollar industry in this country, and I would wager that many people on this call have had personal experience with scams or know someone who's been the victim of scams. They become very, very clever. They tend to be quite skilled in convincing a person to part with money or with personal information, and they prey on the elderly. And with so many of our continuing care retirement communities in Charlotte, you probably can't find anyone who lives in them who hasn't answered a phone call from a scammer. It's really horrendous how awful this problem is. Next slide, Maddie. So it is difficult to discern the motivation of potential scammers. As a matter of fact, it's kind of hard to tell if they're legitimate salespeople. Certainly I think many of us can say no to someone who's trying to sell something we don't want or need. But scammers are very clever in how they can fashion their story, and more often than not, they employ fear tactics to extract things from us. And we know that the elderly are often so very polite and so trusting and so generous and often don't want conflict, and they may really be easily taken off guard by a scammer. Next slide. So the types of scams that are out there are monetary awards or sweepstakes that would require money to process the award or to cover taxes. For example, a 75-year-old gentleman that I saw, he was a retired accountant, and he received a mailing that said he was the winner of a $10,000 sweepstakes, and to receive the check, he would have to send $10 for processing. And you can see that this individual would think, well, $10 to get $10,000, why not? Well, when the scammers received the $10, they realized that they had a willing person. They sent him another letter saying, we were mistaken. It was actually $100,000 that you won and not $10,000, we're happy to say. And all it will take is for you to send us a $1,000 check to process this award. And the gentleman did send that $1,000 award. His wife found the letters on his desk and put an end to that. And the only thing she could do was report the incident to the U.S. Postal Service because this was considered mail fraud. But this happens so commonly that no other law enforcement agency has the time or the inclination to track these scammers down, like the FBI, for example. So there was very little remedy or very little way to stop these scammers. Another common scam is the fake utility worker scam, where the doorbell rings and there are two uniformed workers with identification badges who say they're with the gas company, for example, and that they're investigating a gas leak in the home and that it's extremely dangerous. So the susceptible individual might let the two people in. One of the workers will distract the individual while the other one goes through the house and rifles through drawers and tries to steal things. The next item is sales offers with high recurring fees. This is not necessarily a scam, but a gullible person may not realize what they're signing up for. And if you give out personal information like a credit card or a debit card, you may get a recurring fee taken from the account. This one I think everyone has heard of, the IRS representative demanding taxes, and we all know that the IRS doesn't call for that. But what you'll hear is someone calling saying your arrears and your taxes, we're sending the police, but we can call the police off if you send us such and such amount of money. And the next one I found incredibly effective and concerning because it happened to a family member of mine. My mother-in-law had received a phone call from the quote-unquote police department demanding bail money to release her grandson, who was my son. They knew my son's name, and the person they put on the phone impersonating my son knew his grandmother's nickname that he calls her. So clearly they had done some research. Perhaps it was on social media. It's very hard to know how they got that kind of personal intelligence, but it worked. They asked for $10,000 from my mother-in-law. If it weren't for her not being able to find her way to the bank, I suspect she might have done it, but she got lost, and that worked its way out. She had told us about it a week later, and I asked her why she left my son in jail for the past week. Next slide, please. So preventing scams, I mean, this is general information for all of us, and to the degree that an individual with dementia might be approachable or vulnerable either by the door or by email or by telephone, there are things that we all need to remember. Simply don't open the door for anyone. Don't respond to emails asking for password resets or other information. You can screen calls with a telephone answering machine, and you can even create a no-call list where only certain calls are allowed through. Obviously, we never give out personal information. And if we feel philanthropic and wish to donate, we should really only do so through official websites. One thing I never thought of is leaving mail in the mailbox for the mailman to pick up when they're delivering you mail. So outgoing mail can be stolen, and useful information can be taken from that as well.